She stood at attention like a statue, but inside, she was calculating. The fog rolled in from the Pacific like a low tide of silence, the kind that soaked into your skin, your thoughts, your breath. It was early morning at Oakstone Marine Base, the kind of morning that smelled like sea salt and something unspoken. A bootstep cracked the stillness, then another, and then laughter. Not the good kind. Well, look what we got here, boys. A princess playing Marine. The voice sliced through the fog like a blade, rough, heavy, full of something too close to cruelty to be called humor. Drill Sergeant Hayes circled a lone figure in formation, a young woman, spine straight, eyes forward, mouth shut. Her uniform was regulation perfect. Her brown hair was tied back, so tight, not even the wind could move it. But inside her, inside Jenna Callahan, everything was already shifting. 20 pairs of male eyes locked on her, some amused, some hostile, none of them respectful. Bet you'll be crying for your mommy by sundown. Princess, Hayes sneered, his face inches from hers. No reaction, no twitch, no flicker of fear. But if anyone had looked closely, not that anyone did, they would have caught the flash in her green eyes. Quick, quiet, like something waiting, something aimed. But Hayes didn't see it. No one did. The laugh spread through the formation like wildfire. The elite Marine Raiders, already legends in their own minds, smirked. To them, this was entertainment. A rookie getting chewed, a woman no less. Clearly out of her depth, they had no idea. The fog clung low as the sun tried to rise. Precision Integration Week had begun, a rare, intense program where select recruits trained alongside active-duty Marine Raiders. For most, it was a career-making honor. For Jenna, it was something else entirely. As they marched toward the barracks, the group fell into rhythm, feet pounding in step, breath measured, focused. Except Jenna wasn't focusing on just the route. She was listening. Behind her, 2 recruits whispered, like kids in the back row of a classroom. Can you believe they let her in? She's gonna slow everyone down. They lowered standards, bro. Guarantee it. Her eyes didn't flinch. Her posture didn't change. But she heard every syllable, and she filed them away. Not in anger, in clarity. This was just noise. The barracks were the color of every base in the country. Gray, practical, uninviting. Bunk beds lined up with military precision, 5 feet apart, not a millimeter over. Jenna chose one near the window. She unpacked with swift, practiced movements. Everything had its place. Her kit was arranged before most recruits even unzipped their duffels. Hayes strolled in like a storm cloud with stripes. He stopped at her bunk. Wow. The princess likes everything neat. Let me guess. You want a pink pillow for bedtime? Laughter again. Easy, cheap, loud. Jenna looked up, expression neutral. Is there a problem with my arrangement, Sergeant? She asked, voice calm as a sniper's breath. Hayes blinked. Just for a moment, then leaned in, voice lower now. We'll see how long that attitude lasts. Callahan, this course breaks everyone eventually. He didn't know she'd been broken before, long ago, in silence, and rebuilt herself out of steel. In the mess hall that evening, Jenna sat alone. No surprise. There, fork in one hand, a slim, battered notebook in the other. She chewed with precision, page flipped with care, observing, always observing, across the room. Commander Wilson watched her, a man whose eyes missed little. He oversaw the integration program and had seen every kind of Marine walk through. Those doors, her file? Standard, nothing special, no red flags, no high honors either, just ordinary. But she wasn't eating like someone ordinary. She wasn't sitting like someone afraid, and that notebook, that wasn't idle doodling. Hayes dropped his tray beside Wilson. She won't make it past the first physical. Wilson raised an eyebrow. That you a week's rations? I don't bet on fairy tales, sir. I don't bet against Marines. Hayes scoffed. She's not a Marine yet. The world was still sleeping. Jenna wasn't. Her bed was made. Gear tight, boots polished. Stance, ready, calm as dawn. Hayes barked from the doorway. 5-mile run, full combat load. You have 45 minutes. Fall in. The recruits stumbled, groaned, slung on 60 pounds of gear with curses and yawns. Jenna moved like a machine. Quiet. Methodical. Outside, the air was colder than expected. Coastal wind. Sharp. Unforgiving. They ran up hills, through mud, over rocks, by mile 2. Bodies sagged. Breasts grew ragged. Recruits peeled off, one by one, slowed to a crawl. Jenna didn't slow. She moved with controlled rhythm. Arms pumping, breath measured, eyes locked forward. Past one recruit, then another, then another. Past Miller, past Thompson, past Disbelief. 4th overall, under time. Hayes' jaw tightened. Beginner's luck, but his eyes were uncertain now, like he'd just missed something important. The classroom buzzed like a nest of flies. Master Sergeant Reeves clicked through slides of weapon systems with the energy of a bored substitute teacher. The M4A6 precision rifle, effective range? Hands shot up. Jenna stayed down. Callahan, Reeves barked, annoyed. Since you're so busy writing, want to educate the class? The room went silent. Jenna looked up, unfazed. 1,000 meters with match-grade ammo. Sir, but under optimal conditions, experienced shooters have pushed past 1,400. Reeves blinked. That's correct. Hayes, watching from the back, narrowed. His eyes, that night, while others played cards or whispered jokes. Jenna sat cross-legged on her bunk, eyes closed, hands outstretched as if cradling a rifle, breathing in 5-second intervals. Mental practice, someone whispered. Like visualization. Hayes watched too. He didn't say a word, but something gnawed at him. Something he couldn't place. Day 2. Live fire range. Recruits were paired in twos. Jenna got Miller. Ladies first, he smirked, stepping aside. Jenna stepped forward, picked up the M9. 15 rounds, 15 yards. She assumed the stance. She fired. All 15 clustered center mass like a surgeon's scalpel. The instructor stared. Where do you learn to shoot like that? My father taught me, sir. Simple answer, but it wasn't simple at all. Miller missed 8 of his. Lunch came. Word spread? The girl? The princess? She could shoot. Commander Wilson sat beside her again. Your file doesn't mention special. Weapons training. It wasn't relevant, sir. Wilson nodded slowly. Tomorrow, the Raiders would demonstrate precision long-range shooting with the Barrett MRAD. Something flickered in Jenna's eyes. A twitch, a breath. I looked forward to it. That night, lightning split the sky. Rain beat against the windows like fists, inside. Jenna cleaned her rifle, disassembled it with reverence. One of the raiders leaned over. Where are you from? Montana. Hunting country. Jenna nodded, said nothing more. He didn't need her to. The next day, the Barrett MRAD was unveiled like a holy relic. Commander Wilson gestured to the far hills. Target. 3 kilometers. That's almost 2 miles. Expert level. Hayes smirked near Jenna. You impressed, Callahan? They're skilled, she answered. Yeah, he grunted. Takes years. No one just picks this up. But she wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the rifle, as if remembering something or someone that night. She opened her footlocker, removed. A photo. Old, faded, a girl, younger, smiling, next to a man in marine dress blues. Both holding trophies. The caption read, Quantico Junior Precision Champion. She exhaled, not because she was nervous, because it was almost time. And the next morning, they'd all find out who Jenna Callahan really was. Why was she tying a ribbon to the barrel in front of everyone? The sky opened that morning like a secret finally ready to speak. Clean blue, no wind. The kind of rare, perfect weather long-range shooters prayed for. Not a cloud in sight. Not a shadow moving wrong. Just stillness and tension. The recruits stood along the advanced firing range, some squinting toward the far hills. Others already murmuring about the impossible shot ahead. 3 kilometers. Jenna Callahan stood at the edge of the formation, silent, watching, feeling. Every Marine knew the name Barrett MRAD, a precision rifle capable of pushing bullets further than most humans could see. It was a weapon that whispered legends. But 3 kilometers? That wasn't just long range, that was myth. Commander Wilson stood with the rifle in hand, his voice measured, carrying easily across the open field. This target is not standard. This is not about qualifying. This is about what's possible. The kind of shot that could change the course of a battle. Or save a life. He paused. Wind, temperature, barometric pressure, and even the Earth's rotation must be considered. Whispers ran through the group. The flag at the target 3 kilometers away was barely a flicker of red. Jenna's eyes locked on it and stayed there. Before our raiders demonstrate, Wilson continued, we'll open the line for volunteers. Anyone who wants to attempt the shot may step forward. A silence thicker than armor dropped over the recruits. No one moved. Wilson nodded slightly. Understandable. This shot takes years of study. Training. I'd like to try, sir. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the crowd. Like thunder. Heads turned, mouths hung open. Callahan? Hayes barked, half laughing. You can't be serious. I am, Sergeant. The raiders exchanged glances. Some were amused. 1 or 2 just looked surprised. Miller snorted. She wants to play sniper now? But Wilson didn't smile. He studied her. He saw something in her eyes. Stillness, a kind of dangerous calm. Permission granted, he said slowly. Show us what you can do. Jenna stepped forward, accepting the Barrett MRAD like it was something sacred. The crowd parted as she walked. She didn't look left or right, didn't blink. She had done this 1,000 times before, only never in front of an audience. She laid prone. The rifle pressed into her shoulder like it belonged there. Her movements were precise, mechanical, but intimate. Her body angled just slightly. Elbows firm, but not tense. Chin to stock, spine aligned. It wasn't showy. It was perfect. From his vantage point, Wilson leaned over to Hayes. Her form, that's textbook. She memorized it. Hayes grumbled, but his voice lacked certainty. Jenna reached into her pocket, pulled out a thin ribbon, tied it to the barrel. Several recruits chuckled. What the hell is that? But one of the raiders stepped closer, watching the ribbon flutter. She's gauging wind direction, he muttered. That's smart. She's actually calculating windage correctly, another whispered. Jenna adjusted her scope, then adjusted again. 3 kilometers. She barely needed to look. Her mind had already solved the equation. She controlled her breathing. 5 seconds in, hold for 3. 5 seconds out. She hadn't invented this rhythm. Her father had. She remembered him beside her at dawn, back when the rifle was bigger then. She was. His voice calm, firm, patient. Breathe like you mean it, not like you need it. At first, she didn't understand. Now it was muscle memory. Now it was everything. The firing range was dead silent. Even Hayes had stopped sneering. Jenna exhaled slowly, moved her finger to the trigger, paused in that perfect heartbeat between moments. She fired. The Barrett MRAD roared. The recoil pulsed through her bones. But Jenna stayed still, didn't move, didn't even blink. She was still watching, waiting 1 second, 2, 3, 5, and then, across the field, barely audible ting. Uff. Small flash, the red light blinked, center hit. Confirmed, silence, no laughter, no applause, just disbelief. Wilson raised his binoculars. His jaw dropped open. Target hit confirmed. He said, center mass, first shot. No one breathed. Jenna began breaking down her position with steady, practiced hands, not a hint of celebration on her face, but a small smile, a secret one, played at the corner of her mouth. Hayes took a step forward. That's not possible. Miller shook his head. Nobody makes that shot first try. A raider knelt beside Jenna. Where did you learn to shoot like that, recruit? She stood, rifle held at port arms, composed, calm, before she could speak. Wilson approached. Explain yourself. Jenna met his eyes. My father was head marksmanship instructor at Quantico for 15 years, sir. He taught me to shoot when I was 12. And? She hesitated. Just for a beat? I was junior national precision rifle champion. 3 years running, sir. A collective murmur spread through the group like wildfire. Hayes turned pale. Why wasn't any of this in your file? Wilson asked. Jenna's voice didn't change. You always said respect is earned through action, not records. I didn't come to impress. I came to perform. Wilson looked at her. Long, quiet. Then he turned to Hayes. Well, I'd say the performance just spoke. Volumes, wouldn't you, Sergeant? Hayes swallowed. Yes, sir. By lunch, everything had changed. Recruits who once avoided her now gravitated toward her. Raiders sat beside her. Questions flew fast. How do you stabilize after the shot? Do you visualize the bullet path? What's your longest wind correction? And Jenna answered them all, with humility, with clarity, with a presence none of them had expected. One raider extended his hand. Staff Sergeant Cooper. She shook it. Callahan. That was some shooting. With your skills, you could have joined Delta Recon, even CIA Direct Entry. Why the Marines? Jenna's eyes softened. My father was a Marine. He passed last year. This was for him. Cooper stilled. Was your father Michael Callahan? She nodded. He stared. Michael Callahan trained half the snipers in the course. That afternoon, the drills felt different. Hayes was quieter, respectful. When he asked Jenna to demonstrate proper prone form for the unit, there was no sarcasm, no showmanship, just a direct tone. She dropped into position, executed perfectly. This, Hayes said, gesturing, is what marksmanship posture looks like. Take notes. Some recruits exchanged surprised looks, but no one laughed. Later, as the sun dipped low and the sky glowed orange over Oakstone, Hayes approached Jenna near the range. He looked different. Recruit Callahan, he said quietly. A word. They stepped aside. He stood at parade rest. Eyes steady. I owe you an apology. Jenna said nothing. I made assumptions. Based on bias, that was wrong. You earned more than just my respect today. She blinked, almost surprised. Thank you, Sergeant. Hayes nodded. Your father. He trained me years ago. I was just one of many. I doubt he remembered me. He remembered everyone. Sergeant. Kept notebooks. Said every Marine deserved to be remembered. Hayes looked away, swallowing hard. He was a great man. Jenna's voice lowered. Yes, Sergeant. He was that night in the barracks. The photograph sat on Jenna's chest again. Her and her father, smiling, proud. But this time, something was different. She felt it in her spine, in her breath. She wasn't just his daughter anymore. She was her own force now, and Oakstone had just witnessed the beginning. Why was the loudest man on base suddenly quoting her father? The next morning started before the sun had even stretched its arms. The pre-dawn cold bit at exposed fingers, and boot steps crunched in unison as recruits assembled for formation. But something had shifted. Where once Jenna Callahan stood alone, now she was surrounded, not by friends, not yet, but by proximity. Respect had a strange gravitational pull. It didn't make people warm immediately, but it made them pause before judging, made them lean in. Commander Wilson stood tall, clipboard in hand. His voice carried with its usual calm authority. Today's exercise will involve team shooting competitions. Each unit will consist of a shooter and a spotter, coordination, breathing, trust. He paused. Callahan will not be competing. She'll be assisting instructors in evaluating fundamentals. That part hit different. The girl they had called Princess just 2 days ago, now given an evaluator's post, and no one questioned it. Not out loud. Not anymore. Sergeant Hayes stepped forward. He looked contained. Teams are as follows. He began reading names, pairing recruits with raiders for instruction. When the final names were called, the units broke off across the range, setting up. Hayes turned to Jenna. You'll rotate between positions. Observe, correct, report. Yes, Sergeant. Her voice didn't rise, didn't smile, just clear, focused. She moved between teams like a shadow in daylight, not trying to impress anyone, just watching, quietly correcting. Relax your right shoulder. Your spotter's angle is 5 degrees off. Trigger pulls too sharp. Let the breath carry it. Even when her words were soft, they landed like steel. At Miller's station, Hayes watched from a distance as Jenna crouched beside him. Elbow placement's throwing off your sight picture, she said calmly. Too much tension in your upper body. You're not holding a grenade. You're cradling precision. Miller adjusted, fired. The shot rang out and landed 2 rings closer to center. He looked over, stunned. Again, Jenna said. He fired. Another hit, dead center. His eyes widened. That's the closest I've ever. Don't celebrate, repeat it. Make the body remember. She walked off before he could thank her. Hayes approached from the other side. What was the issue? Structural tension, she said. Shoulder overcompensation. Hayes nodded. Fix him. And just like that, the dynamic had shifted. He wasn't challenging her anymore. He was deferring. By lunchtime, the mess all buzzed like a hive. But this time, the talk wasn't about who was going to wash out. It was about breathing patterns, trigger control, vision discipline. Everyone was analyzing their own technique, suddenly aware that maybe they didn't know as much as they thought. Jenna sat down at the long steel table with her tray. As usual, quiet, methodical, alone, but not for long. Raiders began joining her, Cooper first, then Salinas, then a recruit she hadn't even spoken to yet. Then, to everyone's quiet surprise, Hayes, tray in hand. Mind if I join you? The table went still, the tension thick. Jenna looked at him, just for a moment. Of course, Sergeant. He sat down across from her, and for a beat, no one spoke. Then he tapped his temple. You know, back when I went through sniper school, your father had a saying. Said a Marine's most valuable weapon isn't the rifle. It's the one up here. Several recruits leaned in. He said most shooters think it's about strength, about confidence. But confidence without discipline is a ricochet waiting to happen. Jenna looked at him, unsure what to make of the sudden philosophy. Hayes sipped his coffee. Watching you yesterday reminded me of that. There was a long silence, then one of the younger raiders leaned over. Hey, Sarge, is it true you started calling her Princess during day 1? A ripple of smirks passed through the table. Hayes flushed slightly. That was inappropriate. I was wrong. But before Jenna could say anything, she smiled, a small one. I don't mind Princess, actually. Hayes blinked. You don't? She shrugged lightly. My father used to call me that. Side every princess in fairy tales had a hidden power no one saw coming. The table cracked with laughter. The good kind this time. Someone raised a bottle of water. To the Princess Sniper of Oakstone. Others joined in, even Hayes. The afternoon drills took place on a new section of the range. Close-range snap shooting, followed by reactive drills with changing variables. Jenna didn't shoot. She didn't have to. She instructed, explained, demonstrated, and for the first time, people asked her questions, not to challenge her, to learn. Later that day, Commander Wilson stood before the full group, his expression thoughtful. In recognition of exceptional skill demonstrated during this integration program, he announced, I'm recommending recruit Callahan for advanced marksmanship training upon completion of basic. A pause. The Marine Scout sniper community has expressed early interest. Murmurs of approval. Furthermore, I've spoken with Corps headquarters. Wilson continued. A new marksmanship trophy will be established at Quantico in honor of Master Gunnery Sergeant Michael Callahan, to be awarded annually to the top shooting recruit. Jenna's breath caught. She didn't cry, but her grip tightened around the vise. Edge of her tray. Some things go beyond pride, beyond achievement. Some things feel like a hand reaching back from the grave to squeeze your shoulder and say you've done well that night. Hayes approached as Jenna cleaned her assigned rifle. He didn't bark, didn't joke. Callahan. She looked up. I owe you more than just an apology. He held something small in his palm. This was your father's instructor badge. He gave it to me when I finished sniper school. Told me to pass it on when I met someone who earned it. He extended it. I can't think of anyone more worthy. Jenna's hand closed around the badge like it was made of breath. Thank you, Sergeant. His voice cracked. Just slightly, I failed to live up to his standard, but watching you, your focus, your calm, your ability to make even the loudest critics listen, reminded me what that standard actually was. He turned to go, then paused. He saved my career once, back when I nearly failed out, worked with me after hours. Told me, a Marine doesn't quit until they've emptied the last round in the mag. And then they throw the mag. He looked back. You emptied every round this week, Callahan, and threw the mag. That night, Jenna lay in her bunk, the instructor badge in her hand, her father's photo tucked beneath her pillow. Sleep didn't come quickly, but it came softer, and for the first time since she'd arrived at Oakstone, she didn't feel like she was carrying the legend alone. Why was she on the range alone before even the flags were raised? It was still dark when Jenna stepped onto the range. No voices, no boots, just the rhythmic thump of her own heart and the crisp bite of pre-dawn air against her face. The world was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt ancient, the kind her father used to say was the only place you could hear your soul breathe. In one hand, she held the small insignia pin. In the other, nothing, not even a rifle. She didn't come to shoot. She came to stand where he once stood. Commander Wilson found her there, motionless, facing the distant targets. You know, he said gently, your father used to do the same thing, every morning, just before sunrise. Jenna nodded. He said the first light showed the truest path of the bullet. Wilson smiled faintly. Faith takes many forms, Callahan. They stood there together in silence, two figures generations apart, but bound by something deeper than rank or duty. What will you do now? Wilson asked finally. With your skills, any path is open. Jenna looked down at the pen in her palm. Follow his footsteps, sir. Become the best. Then teach others to be better. Formation that morning felt different. Not because the drills changed, because everyone had. The recruits stood a little straighter, watched a little more closely, and they didn't glance at Jenna with suspicion anymore. They listened for her voice. Wilson gave the orders. Hayes echoed them, but everyone's eyes searched for her. Team-based exercises again. Wilson announced, today, we focus on communication under pressure. Spotter and shooter must adjust. Together, speed is not the goal. Accuracy is. He looked directly at Jenna. You're not shooting today, Callahan. You're teaching. Jenna nodded once. Yes, sir, Hayes added. And don't assume she'll go easy on you, Callahan. Expects fundamentals. If you skip steps, she know. That comment would have sounded mocking 2 days ago now. It sounded like admiration. She moved between units like a current. Recruits rotated between roles, spotter, shooter, observer, and Jenna watched it all. Not just how they fired, but how they moved, how they breathed, how they talked when. No one else was listening. She caught the flinch in one recruit's shoulder, corrected it without judgment. She noticed the hesitation in another's voice during spotting, taught him how to call windage with confidence. Even Miller, who once mocked her, now stood waiting for her input like a student awaiting a final grade. "Elbows better," she said, "but you're still breathing in a stutter." "I know," he muttered. "I panic before the shot." Jenna crouched beside him, then changed the rhythm. "Control the inhale. Make the exhale carry the bullet. Your lungs shouldn't betray you. They should be your trigger." He nodded, fired, hit. The grin on his face was small, but it was real. Midday sun blazed across the range. Dust hung in the air like a slow memory. Hayes walked beside her between lanes. "Your father always said the best shooters make the worst teachers," he remarked. Jenna tilted her head, "Because they can't explain what they do instinctively." Hayes nodded. "But you're doing both." She didn't smile, just adjusted her cap. "Teaching is how you prove you understand it." Lunch was different now, not just because of who sat where, but because of why. Jenna no longer sat alone raiders. Recruits, even instructors, formed a quiet perimeter around her, not out of reverence, but because she had become a center of gravity. She had the thing no amount of rank or record could force. Credibility. One raider leaned in between bites of mashed potatoes. "Is it true your dad could hit a playing card at 1,000 yards? Jenna sipped her water. 900. He refused to claim 1,000. Said the shot was dishonored if you bragged about it. Another raider laughed. "That's the most Marine thing I've ever heard," Miller added. "Did he teach you that breathing trick?" Jenna nodded. 10,000 dry fires before he let me fire live. He said bullets were expensive, but failure was costly. Around her, heads nodded. No one was mocking. They were listening. Afternoon brought a different energy. Shooting had ended for the day, but learning hadn't. Jenna gathered a small group near the bleachers. No one ordered her to do it. She just sat down and recruits followed. Miller, Thompson, two others who hadn't even spoken to her until now. She laid out a rifle on the bench. "All right, let's talk eye relief, recoil management, and follow through. Not just how to fire. How to think through the shot." They leaned in. She walked them through it slowly, step by step. "This isn't magic. It's a discipline. Anyone can learn it. If you're willing to let go of your ego." Someone asked, "What happens when the wind changes mid-breath?" Jenna answered without pause. "You adapt. Shooting is 90% awareness, 10% decision. If you're not listening to the wind, you're already too late." From a distance, Wilson watched the group. Hayes stood beside him, arms crossed, never seen. "Them is quiet during a break," Hayes muttered. Wilson just smiled. "She's not just a shooter anymore. She's a standard, and they know it." Evening approached like a soft command. Recruits gathered in the mess hall. The usual clatter of trays and boots replaced by hushed retellings of Jenna's 3-kilometer shot. But she sat with her notebook again, writing, not bragging, not boasting, recording. Hayes approached, slower than usual. "Callahan." She looked up. He held something behind his back. "I went back into the archives, found this." He handed it over. An old photograph. Marine sniper instructor course, 15 years old. A younger Michael Callahan stood at the center, flanked by trainees. And there, to the right, a much younger Sergeant Hayes. "He was the best I ever had," Hayes said. Voice quiet. "Said something I never forgot." Jenna looked up. He said, "Respect isn't given with rank or taken by force. It's earned through actions that speak when words fail." Jenna's eyes welled for just a second. "That sounds like him." Hayes cleared his throat. "Lights out in 5. But before walking away, he turned back. "Your old man would be damn proud, Marine." That night, Jenna didn't sleep immediately. She lay on her bunk, the old photo resting on her chest. Outside, Oakstone Base grew quiet inside. Her name had already started to spread beyond the barracks, beyond the range. Some called her the Princess Sniper. Others whispered 3K. But she wasn't chasing titles. She was chasing precision, legacy, honor, and tomorrow? Tomorrow, she would begin passing it forward. Why was she staring at a letter instead of cleaning her rifle like the others? The hum of the barracks was routine now. Boots clanking, weapons being disassembled and oiled, voices low and focused. Recruits hunched over their rifles like monks. In prayer. Precision, attention, rhythm. These weren't just skills anymore. They were expectations, all because of her. But Jenna Callahan wasn't cleaning her rifle. She was sitting perfectly still, elbows on the edge of her bunk, holding a folded envelope in both hands like it might vanish if she blinked. No return address. Just her name in black ink. She hadn't seen that handwriting since before the funeral. 2 hours earlier, the day had started like the others. Sunrise. Over Oakstone, a formation that didn't feel like punishment anymore, and instructions barked with less hostility and more urgency. Today's focus: rapid environmental assessment, wind, range, light angle, target speed. Hayes stood before the group with a kind of sharpness in his eyes that only came from being challenged, not by threat, but by pride. These are the conditions that separate the sharpshooters from the rest. Your gear won't save you. Your gut won't either. Only your ability to see. He turned toward Jenna. Callahan, you'll assist in evaluation and run the wind table. That last part sent ripples through the formation, Jenna. Running the wind table? That was usually reserved for instructors or raiders, but no one said a word, and no one looked surprised out on the range. She moved like clockwork. Recruits called out conditions. Jenna checked their math. When they were wrong, she didn't scold. She re-explained. Wind isn't a number. It's a story. Listen to the grass, watch the dust trails. Feel it before you calculate it. She taught them how to adjust in real time. Don't chase the correction. Anticipate the movement. Hayes stood back, arms folded. You'd think she was born doing this. One of the raiders muttered. Hayes just nodded. She probably was. That afternoon, the team returned from drills, uniforms streaked with sweat and dust. Inside the barracks, the recruits laughed. Real laughter. A few even swapped jabs with the raiders now. The divide was fading, and Jenna? She walked in just behind Miller, who now carried his gear with pride instead of nerves. A sealed envelope rested on her bunk. Plain, heavy, no markings, no stamp, only her name. She sat down slowly, unfolded it, and read Jenna. If this finds you, it means they finally gave you a shot. About damn time. There's something I never told you after the championship. When you hit that coin at 1,100 yards, I knew right then you were better than I'd ever been. Not because of your shot, but because of how you didn't brag afterward. You nodded once and just walked off the line. That's how I knew. Being a good shooter is easy. Being a good person, that's harder. If you're out there now, if you're wearing the uniform, then don't just shoot. Teach, lift others, make the cores better than you found it. You owe them nothing, but they might need everything you've got. Earn it, Dad. She stared at the words for a long time. She hadn't known he'd written this. It must have been left with someone or in a file. Or maybe Wilson found it and waited for the right time. Either way, it arrived exactly when it needed to, like a bullet landing after the echo fades. Callahan? Miller's voice broke the silence. You good? She nodded, folded the letter, slipped it into her breast pocket. Yeah, she said quietly. Let's go clean rifles. That evening, something new happened. Jenna called the recruits into a circle on the range. No rank, no commands, just space. And then she handed her rifle to Miller. Hit the 600-yard target. His eyes widened. Your rifle? You've earned the attempt. I'll spot. Hayes and Wilson stood in the distance, watching. Are we witnessing a transfer of power? Hayes said, half joking. No, Wilson replied. We're witnessing leadership. Miller lay prone. Jenna knelt beside him. Remember the rhythm. He nodded. 5 in. Hold for 3, 5 out. He fired. The ping echoed across the field. Direct. Hit. His face lit up like a child's. Jenna smiled. A rare, open one. You did that. I had the best spotter in the course, he said, and meant it. That night in the mess hall, the chatter wasn't about gossip, rank, or chow. It was about improvement, technique, growth. Jenna sat beside Cooper and Salinas. Cooper asked, "You ever think about being an instructor full-time?" She shook her head. "Not yet." Salinas leaned in. "You're already doing it. You realize that, right?" She looked around, at the recruits, the raiders, even Hayes laughing at a table nearby. Her voice was quiet. "I just want to make sure the next girl who walks into a barracks doesn't have to prove she belongs before she even speaks." Later that night, Jenna returned to her bunk. The photo of her father was there, the badge, the notebook, and now the letter. She arranged them side by side, like gear before a mission. Outside, the wind picked up, but in her chest, it was still. From his office window, Commander Wilson watched her silhouette settle in under the bunk light. He sipped his coffee slowly. Some recruits came to survive, some came to perform, but every now and then, one came to change the entire system without raising their voice, and this time, her shot had been heard. Why did she freeze when they called her legend? The range was quiet, not silent, just controlled. Recruits moved with purpose. Spotters called wind shifts without stammering. Trigger pulls were measured, not panicked. Even the instructors said less now, because now they were listening, and it all traced back to one shot, one breath, one girl they used to mock. Now they called her Callahan. But something was shifting again, not in others, in her. It started when one of the younger recruits approached her with wide, admiring eyes. Sergeant, wait. You're not a sergeant yet, are you?" "I'm a recruit," Jenna replied softly. "Same as you." He looked confused. "But you're a legend." She blinked, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't know what to say. Legend. She had been called a lot of things. Princess, anomaly, marine, but never that. And hearing it felt wrong because she knew the truth. She wasn't perfect. She was still proving it, every second. That day's drills moved forward like clockwork. Wilson had assigned her to lead the marksmanship evaluations in full. No backup, no instructor watching. Over her shoulder, "You're not shadowing anymore," he told her. "You are the lesson now." She nodded, didn't argue. But her hands felt heavier than usual when she set up the spotting scope. Not because she doubted her ability, but because she wasn't sure how to carry this new weight. They looked at her differently now, not just with respect, with expectation, as if everything she said had to be profound, as if every correction was gospel, as if one mistake from her would unravel all they'd begun to believe. It reminded her of the final championship she'd won, standing on a podium that felt colder than the rifle in her hands. Her father beside her, smiling, proud, but his voice quiet that night. "You don't owe them anything," he had whispered. Not even a smile. She hadn't understood it back then, but she did now, because being admired felt a lot like being caged, on the line. Miller missed 3 consecutive shots at 800 meters. He cursed, slapped the bolt too hard, reset, eyes off the wind. Jenna said gently, "You chasing?" He exhaled. "I'm trying, but I keep thinking about everyone watching." She paused. "Then don't shoot for them." He looked up at her. "Shoot for who taught you." He nodded, and the next round landed center, but her words stayed in her own ears after that. Who was she shooting for now? Her father? Herself? Or the Marine Corps that kept pushing her higher, maybe faster than she was ready to go? At Chow, even the raiders sat quietly when she entered, not awkwardly, not resentfully, but reverently, and that, somehow, was worse. Cooper raised a water bottle to Oakstone's own sniper saint. The table chuckled. She smiled faintly. But her stomach turned, because saints don't get to be human. And she still was, that night. Jenna skipped the barracks routine. Instead, she found herself back at the 3-kilometer range. Alone. The stars above were sharp, cold. Like the night her father died. The last phone call. The voicemail she never returned. The guilt she wore under her uniform like a second skin. She set up the Barrett MRAD. Not to shoot. Just to be. Her fingers traced the barrel, the scope, the bipod. Hinges, and then, from the shadows. You ever afraid you won't live up to what they think you are? It was Hayes. No sarcasm, no rank, just a voice in the dark. Jenna didn't turn around. All the time. Hey, Hayes, step closer. I watched your father go through the same thing. Every time someone called him the standard, it made him smaller. Not bigger. She finally looked up. He never showed that. No, Hayes said, because he didn't believe in showing pain. But it was there. Especially after he lost your mother. He held everything in. Like it was part of the job. Jenna's eyes burned suddenly. She hadn't known that part. Hayes sat beside her in the dirt. You think being good at something means you owe everyone a version of yourself they've created. She nodded slowly, but that's not respect. He said, that's projection. The truth is, they don't need a legend. They need a leader who bleeds, who doubts, who gets back up, that inspires people, not perfection. She said nothing for a while. Then finally, I'm tired. Hayes nodded. I know, but you're not alone. And somehow, that mattered more than she expected. The next morning, Jenna arrived late to formation for the first time. Wilson raised an eyebrow, but didn't question her. Because when she stepped into place, her back was straight. Her eyes were clear. She wasn't shaking off the weight of expectation anymore. She was choosing it because it wasn't about the nickname, or the trophy, or the whisper of legend. It was about the next recruit. The one who would arrive scared, alone, dismissed, just like she was, and would one day stand exactly where she was standing now. That afternoon, Jenna walked to Miller's bunk with a folded piece of paper. What's this? He asked. A wind calculation chart. Based on terrain shift at Oakstone. It'll help. You made this? She nodded. 4. The next time I'm not around. His face fell slightly. You leaving? Someday. Not yet, but someday. Miller paused. I think you've already made more impact than any instructor I've ever had. Jenna smiled. This time, without weight. You don't make an impact by being impressive. You make it by paying attention. He nodded slowly, then saluted her. Not as a recruit salutes a higher rank, but as one shooter salutes another. That night, Jenna tucked herself in with her father's letter beside her again. Only now, the line she couldn't stop reading was the last one. They might need everything you've got. She understood that now, not as a burden, but as a gift, and she was willing to give it. Every breath, every correction, every bullet. Why were the radios dead when the fire started? The sky cracked open without warning. One moment. It was training drills and dust rising from prone firing positions. The next, smoke, thick, black, curling from the west ridge like a signal no one wanted to see. At first, no one moved because it didn't make sense. Fires weren't supposed to happen here. Not on military training ground, not during controlled range operations. But then came the shouting and the wind. The smoke turned into a wall, fast, hungry, and Oakstone wasn't ready. Everyone off the western perimeter now. Someone barked over the coms, but the coms were stuttering, static, half sentences lost in the panic. Jenna was running before orders came. Her boots slammed across gravel and terrain like they'd been waiting to move this fast. Hayes was right. Behind her, Wilson wasn't far behind either, shouting to a cluster of instructors to count heads, check logs, find out who was still out there. That was the fear no one voiced yet. What if someone was still out on Range 7? The furthest, the most isolated, the range used for long-distance marksmanship drills, the one with no direct line of sight back to base. Jenna reached the tower where range control monitored communications. It was empty. She tried the base radio. Dead. She tried the backup. Nothing but static. They were testing the generators last night, one corporal said, jogging up. Systems must have shorted. The fire might have hit a relay point. How many teams were out? Jenna demanded. 3, he said. But 2 just reported in. Jenna's stomach dropped. Who's missing? The corporal flipped through a clipboard. Miller's team. The moment she heard it, she was moving again. No hesitation. No. Wait for orders. Just action. She grabbed her pack, a handheld radio, and headed for range 7. Callahan. Hayes barked. She turned mid-stride. I'm going. That's not your job. She paused. Eyes calm but lit from within. It is now. And then she was gone. The path to range 7 was nearly a mile, uphill, through brush, and now, through smoke. Visibility dropped to 50 feet. Ash floated down like snow. Her lungs burned by the time she reached the ridge. But she didn't stop. She didn't even slow. Because she remembered something her father said once. When you're the only one left with calm hands, you don't ask for permission. You just act. Miller, she shouted. Range 7. Sound off. No response. Her radio crackled. A few words came through, unintelligible. Then silence again. She moved carefully now. Controlled, crouched near a clearing where the firing line used. To be visible, she spotted 3 figures through the smoke. Hunched, disoriented. Miller. He turned, eyes wide, covered in soot. We lost comms. We tried to hike back but got turned around. Jackson twisted his ankle. Jenna moved fast, grabbed her canteen, splashed water on their faces, checked the ankle. Not broken, just swollen. We can't go back the way you came, she said. Fire's moving faster than the wind readings predicted. How do you know? Miller asked. She didn't answer with words. She pointed to the tree line, the way the smoke was curling, the way the ground heat shimmered, the same way her father taught her to read wind over a 2,000-meter shot. We're going this way. She sighed. Miller hesitated. That's not the range trail. No, she said. It's the sniper path. He blinked. She gave a half smile. My dad used to say, if you know how to hide from the enemy, you know how to hide from fire. They followed her, not because of rank, but because something in her voice made hesitation impossible. She led them along a dry creek bed that dipped below the natural fire line. When they reached a collapsed section of old fencing, Jenna paused. Clear a way through, Jackson. Sit. Elevate the leg, Miller whispered. You ever done this before? Not a fire, she said. But pressure's pressure. She checked her radio again. Still static, so she unzipped her pack, pulled a flare, and lit it. A green signal. One that meant we're alive, extraction possible. Then she aimed it not up, but low, into the clear break of the dry ravine, where the smoke hadn't thickened. It shrieked out like a bullet. A minute passed, then a faint engine sound. Then louder, rotors, a utility chopper, rescue. Wilson watched from the base helipad as the chopper landed when the door slid open and Jenna hopped out, ash-stained and bleeding from one arm. 3 recruits behind her, one limping, one coughing, one gripping her shoulder. The base fell silent. Hayes was the first to move. He didn't speak. He just walked up, took a rifle, and nodded. I knew you'd bring them back, Jenna. Nodded once, didn't say thank you, didn't need to. That night, the base ran quieter than usual. The fire had been controlled, no structures lost, but something else had shifted. She wasn't just the girl who hit from 3 kilometers anymore. She was the one who ran toward danger when the systems failed and the clock ticked louder than orders. She was the first calm breath in a burning moment. Later, as Jenna sat outside with her notebook, Wilson joined her. I've sent my final report, he said. About the fire? About you. She looked up. He continued. Advanced Sniper School. Instructor pipeline. They're interested. She didn't react. He added, they're requesting your file and your philosophy. My philosophy? He held up her notebook. The next generation won't just need shooters. They'll need leaders who teach others how to think under pressure. You've already done that here. Jenna nodded slowly, then looked toward the horizon. I'm not perfect, Wilson smiled. Perfect doesn't inspire people. You do. Why was everyone silent when she stepped onto the parade ground? It wasn't graduation day. Not officially, but the way the sun hit the yard that morning, the way every boot was shined to mirror brightness, and the way the flags seemed to stand a little straighter. It felt like something was being honored. Jenna Callahan stood at attention in her pressed uniform, not alone, surrounded by recruits and raiders alike. But there was still a space around her, an invisible circle, not of isolation, of respect. The kind you don't walk into unless invited. Commander. Wilson stood at the center of the formation with a small box in hand. His voice, always calm, seemed softer today. Not because he was tired, because he meant what came next. Every now and then, he said, the Corps doesn't just find a Marine. He paused, turning toward Jenna. It finds a mirror. Someone who reflects back to us what we forgot to honor. Humility, mastery, sacrifice, and above all, quiet strength. He opened the box. Inside sat a silver medallion. Not standard issue, a custom engraving. One side, 3,000 meters, one shot. The other, respect earned through actions that speak. He stepped forward, presented it without fanfare. No trumpet, no drumline, just silence, the kind that weighs more than applause. Jenna took it with a steady hand, met his eyes. Thank you, sir. Wilson didn't smile, but his eyes did. Later, in the mess hall, there was no line between recruits and raiders anymore. No distance between instructors and the once-dismissed girl from Montana. Everyone knew what had happened. Not just the shot, not just the fire rescue, but everything. How she changed the way they talked about capability. How she redefined what leadership looked like. One raider leaned in, whispering to Hayes, "You still calling her princess?" Hayes didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said, "but now I say it with respect." Jenna passed by them just in time to hear it. She didn't turn around, but she smiled. That evening, Jenna returned to the 3-kilometer range one last time. Alone, she carried no rifle. Only her notebook and the letter. She stood at the firing line. Where it all began, the wind was low, light drifting sideways. She closed her eyes and breathed like she always did. 5 seconds in, hold for 3, 5 out. She opened her notebook to the final page and wrote, "Respect is quiet. It walks alone. It breathes through smoke and through judgment and through doubt. It carries no rank, no badge. It waits until you earn it. And when you do, it never leaves you." She tore the page, folded it, slid it into the hollow base of the range marker post, the way her father used to leave notes for others to find. When they needed it most, a week later, Quantico called. They didn't ask if she would instruct. They asked when, because her name had traveled faster than orders. And her story, from dismissed recruit to 3-kilometer legend, had become more than a narrative. It had become a lesson plan. On the final night before she left Oakstone, Miller caught her by the barracks door. He held a small card, folded, worn. "I wrote this down after my first direct hit. Thought I'd give it to you before you go." She opened it. A single sentence. "You don't teach how to shoot. You teach how to believe." She blinked, felt her throat close slightly. "Thank you," she said quietly. He stepped back. "Safe travels, princess." This time, the word didn't sting. It honored. As the transport lifted off the next morning, Jenna looked out over the base. It was smaller than she remembered. That's what happens when you outgrow the fire that forged you. The photograph of her father sat in her bag, So did the badge and the letter. But they weren't weights anymore. They were wings, and as Oakstone disappeared behind her, a final thought crossed her mind. Clear, certain, and echoing in her father's voice. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.